Hello and welcome to Savvy Women, Smart Investors. I'm Nicole Corning. I am the managing partner here at Pathlight Advisors, and I'm excited to walk you through today's content. Today we are going to really dive into the fact that financial empowerment is really a journey, and it's like a lifelong journey that you're going to go on. You're going to learn today about key financial matters that hit you at every stage of your life and how to navigate them. You'll see the unique financial challenges we face as women, and you're going to learn which questions to ask and be able to get help answering them. Today is not about you feeling like you have all the answers. It's about having financial awareness, building empowerment and confidence, and by the time we're done, we're really helping to boost those feelings in you. So before we begin our journey, here's a brief roadmap to where we're going. We'll be looking at women's financial concerns during the early, mid, and later life stages. As you can see, there's a lot to think about and balance in each of these stages. So remember, though, that while you're in charge of your financial journey, you're never alone. No matter how old you are or what life stage you're in, a financial advisor, an investment professional can help you navigate the financial opportunities and challenges in front of you. And sometimes it's even just reaching out to your tribe of women. So don't be afraid to have conversations with women you know who maybe are more engaged in their finances. Start there. Take that first baby step. As women, we do a great job at building community and connection. So lean into that as a woman when you're trying to go on this financial empowerment journey. But one of the reasons women have so many more choices and challenges today is just so much has changed about the way that we live our lives. So let's rewind the clock back nearly 7 decades, and a woman's role was clearly defined. In the 50s, gender roles were very traditional, with men being the primary breadwinners and women expected to focus on domestic duties and caregiving. And this era saw a strong emphasis on conformity to these roles, with everyone in society was expecting certain kinds of behaviors and opportunities to be available to individuals based on what their gender was. So lucky for us, the 70s brought the women's movement to life, and that decade was really a game changer. During that time, women challenged traditional roles and the rules that were put in place for them, and they started entering the workforce in really significant numbers. And things have continued to change. So women's roles today are a lot more varied and much less defined. So some fun facts: in 1950, about 30% of the US labor force was comprised of women. And that number has nearly doubled to 59% of the US labor workforce. And that reflects a 2.3 million women addition who left, that represents even 2.3 women who joined the workforce but left during the pandemic. So that during the pandemic, we saw driving the U.S. female participation rate in the U.S. workforce down by a little bit as women had to really refocus back in the home, or felt like they did. And the last time the rate was that low was in 1988. So in 1967, only 12% of married mothers were their family's primary breadwinners. In 2023, nearly 30% of married women earned more than their husbands. So almost a 3 times gain in breadwinners in households. So given our position today, more women are involved in their personal and family finances. So it's more important than ever that we as women know what could come up financially at every stage of our life. So let's start with early life. Maybe your 20s to your 30s. So at this point, you might have student debt, you are working at a job to pay that student debt, and or you're looking for a job and you're looking at kind of figuring out the future and what the rest of your life looks like. So this is a time to be sure to start off on the right financial foot by establishing good credit and taking care of it. It really is awful that they don't teach this to us in high school or college, but these are really important principles that are going to affect everything in your life. Like your credit score drives so much, from like renting an apartment to getting a mortgage to buying a car, getting a job. Some jobs, they'll pull your credit score, so, in your credit report. So it's really important to just know the basics. It's not rocket science. So there are two types of debt. One is revolving debt and one is installment debt. And when you have installment debt, so those are things like car loans or mortgages. So as you pay that balance off, it's not still available to you. But credit cards, you need to be more aware of if you get close to your limit, or really over 50, if you carry more than a 50% balance on your credit cards, that can really hurt your credit. So really focus on reducing that revolving debt, that credit card debt. That's one way that you can really help keep your finances in order in general, because it's reducing your monthly payments, but it's also helping with your credit score. So in terms of how much should you be spending on the things that you spend money on, so consider the 50-30-20 rule. So 50% of your income should go to food, housing, and utilities, things that are necessities, things that you have to pay in order to navigate through life. 30% can go into wants, like things that are fun for you, like traveling or morning coffee, getting your nails done, joining a gym, although some of you might count that in the 50%, but that 50%, I think the litmus test for if something is a need or a want, because sometimes people question what is a need or a want. And there are wants that feel like necessities, but they really aren't, because there's another avenue for them. So that's why like a gym membership's a good example. So when I was really poor in my 20s, I couldn't afford to join a gym. I lived in a major city and the gyms were really expensive. But exercise was critical to me, right? My mental health, my physical health. So, for a couple of years, I just spent money on great running shoes, and I just ran outside because it's free. And, or at least it's a lot less expensive to buy running shoes than it is to belong to a gym. So if there's something in your life that you could maybe substitute out, that should go into the want bucket. So things like your house, you can't really substitute out, right? Like where you live is where you live. You need to support that expenditure. Or like utilities, like, yes, maybe you could burn a wood stove to stay warm, but really, like, you need to have heat, you need to have electricity. So be kind of brutal when it comes to those needs versus wants. Then 20% should be used to help you achieve financial goals, such as saving for retirement. Look, in my 20s, I definitely was not focused on retirement, and I often get asked what's the one piece of financial advice that I knew early in life, and it was how important it is to make just even small incremental savings for things like retirement or things like saving for a home. Like those that little bit of savings really snowballs, especially for retirement, because you have 30 to 40 years in the workforce, and that money is going to grow significantly. So 50% on needs, 30% on wants, and 20% on savings goals. So credit scores. Let's get back to credit scores. So what affects credit score? The number one most important thing is your payment history. So paying down debts on time every month benefits your credit score more than any other single factor. And just one payment made 30 days late can do significant harm to your score. An account sent to collections, a foreclosure, or a bankruptcy can have longer, deeper consequences. So payment history accounts for about 35% of your FICO score. And FICO is just another way to say credit score. But, so that, there are times where, I'm the oldest in my family, and I've, told my, my brother, who's a musician and doesn't always pay attention to these kind of things throughout his life. I'm like, look, making your payments on time is really important. So if you can't make a payment, let me know, because I'd rather make a minimum payment for you, and you can either pay me back at some time, or, we'll come out in the wash. But it's so important to make that payment on time. So even just making one payment late can really torpedo your score. On the flip side of that, if you make a late credit or a late payment, yes, it's going to affect your credit, but your world isn't over, right? So if you can get back on track and get 12 months of on-time credit payments, it will really help boost up your credit score again. So I don't want you to feel like if you have made a late payment that there's no way you're getting back on track. You will be absolutely amazed at what committing to making those payments on time and having 12 months of good credit payments under your belt will do for your credit score. So amounts that you owe, this goes back to what we talked about in the previous slide. So how you use credit matters. So I always say credit is good and debt is bad. So credit is just, the availability of you to utilize credit that's extended to you from a bank or a credit card company. Having a lot, so that's a good thing, right? We want to look like a good risk, like a good borrower. So the credit itself is good. The debt that we accrue on it is not necessarily bad, but can be bad. So, again, this is a huge factor on your credit score. So what you might want to do is revisit on all of your credit cards what your limit is, and look to knock down anything that has more than a 50 or 30% balance owed, and try to get that down below that, ideally below 30%, but definitely below 50. So making payments on time and having low credit to debt balance on those revolving debts, which again, revolving debts are things like credit cards really, also home equity lines of credit. So just, low balances on credit cards and pay those bad boys on time, okay? Length of credit history. So 15% of your score is made up with for how long you have credit history. So this is a really good one to talk about right after credit card debt, because I've seen this throughout my career where folks will be like, oh, I paid off my credit card. I've been, working on paying it down for years. I finally paid it off and I closed it. And I'm like, oh, don't do that. Because again, remember, credit is good, right? It's the debt that's bad. So we just want to get rid of the debt, but we want to use it. And when I say get rid of the debt, like the healthiest way to use a credit card is I use it. So I have a credit card that has points, and I use it to pay for things that are monthly expenses, and then I just pay it off at the end of every month. I have a friend who will pay it off once a week. So you don't have to wait just until your payment is due. You can pay it off, each and every week. You can pay it off after you just put a big expense on it, get the points, show that you can manage credit. But the longer you have credit history, the better. So if you have credit cards that you've had for years and years and years, and then you pay it off and you're not really using it that much, I would still consider keeping that open, because it shows that you have been a good creditor for years because you've had that account open. So credit mix. So that's number 4 in our pyramid. So the ability to successfully manage multiple debts in different credit card types tends to benefit your credit score. So credit scoring systems favor a mixture of those installment debts, so things like student loans, mortgages, car loans, personal loans, and revolving debt. So those are things like credit cards and revolving lines of credit, like home equity lines of credit. So that credit mix makes up about 10% of your FICO score. New credit. So it's a statistical fact that new debt raises the odds that you'll fall behind on your old debts. So the credit scoring system, therefore, may ding you just a small amount to any time that you get what's called a hard inquiry on your credit report. So soft inquiries are things like if you're getting insurance, a lot of times a credit or an insurance company will pull your credit report, but that's what's called a soft inquiry. Just about every other time anyone looks at your credit, it's a hard inquiry, and it looks like you're trying to get more debt, and so that raises some red flags on your credit report. So, you know, those hard pulls or hard inquiries are things like if you're getting mortgages or car loans, student loans, you know, or other credit cards. So the other thing I would say is that typically when you're applying for mortgages, there's a 2-week window from the first time your credit is pulled with one mortgage company to have your credit pulled with other mortgage companies, so that you can shop rates. So there's a little wiggle room around mortgages, but basically try to have your credit pulled as little as possible. So okay, now that last part of the budget, that 20% of savings, that can be tough in the early years, I get it, but saving even small amounts sooner rather than later and doing it regularly could have an impact on your bottom line later on that is like outsized. And again, it's not about not doing the things that make life fun, right? So it's not about, you know, not getting your morning cup of coffee. It's not about, you know, not getting your nails done or your hair done or, you know, buying a motorbike if you like, you know, biking as a hobby or travel, right? So it's not about not doing those things. It's just about doing those things and creating a goal for yourself to budget for savings. So look, this slide looks very technical, but it's the concept is how compounding is actually a very simple concept, and how it can really take those small little savings that you're making early in life and amplify them. So think of it like a snowball. You start with a handful of snow, and you know, after rolling it around, the snowball gradually gets bigger and bigger. So likewise, if you open an investment account or a retirement account through your company, and you let that money continue to grow and you don't cash it out, and what I would say is a lot of times people do cash out retirement plans when they move from one company to another, and because they look at it and they're like, well, it was only like $7,000, it was only $8,000, right? But money doubles in value every 10 years at a 7.2% rate of return. So that, let's call it $10,000 when you're 25, that could be worth $160,000 by the time you get to reach retirement at age 65. So next time you switch jobs and you're like, oh, it's not that much money, like, think about how much that can be if you let it grow to retirement. The other thing is, I always say this, like, your 80-year-old or your 60-year-old self is going to thank you, because when you get to be 60, 70, 80, you're not really in the mood to get a side hustle, right? in your 20s, like, look, again, I was poor when I came out of college. I had student loan debt. I was supporting myself. I was living in a big city, and I worked 2 jobs, right? I had my professional day job, which like was entry level wages, back in the 90s. So was not that much. And then I bartended. And that's how I put myself through college too, was bartending. So, in your 20s, it's not difficult to kind of get a second gig, drive for Lyft, drive for Uber, go work at a coffee shop, hostess, waitress, bartend. When you're 65, it's not that, like, first of all, you're a lot more tired at 65 than you are at 25, but also like just life happens, and medically you might not be able to just get some kind of, side hustle. So take advantage of the fact of you have youth on your side and energy, and and let yourself hustle a little bit to do the right thing. So this chart, back to the chart. So this chart is a hypothetical investment of $10,000, and it demonstrates how 3 different investments grow over time. So this bottom line is that gray line is just a 3% rate of return. The middle line is a 5% rate of return, and the purple line is a 6% rate of return. So a lot of times women, studies have shown, are more focused on downside risk protection. Like they're like, I'd rather take less risk because taking risk scares me. So a couple of things to think about. In your retirement accounts, you cannot touch those until you're 59 and a half in a perfect world, right? So if you are 25 years old, like, that's where you should be taking a lot of risk, because markets go up, markets go down. It don't matter, because you have 30 to 40 more years of investing. So, put it on the S&P 500 and let it ride. Well, don't put it all on the S&P 500, but you can take more risk in your early years, especially. So don't just think, oh, I'm gonna, stick it all in a money market, maybe getting a 3% or 2% rate of return. That's not going to get you to where you want to be over your lifetime. Now, the flip side of that is, if you're saving for a house or something in the next couple of years, yes, put it somewhere where you don't have a lot of volatility, and that money is there when you need it for that down payment on the house, right? But if you're saving for retirement, like, take a little risk. Let it have exposure to those ups and downs in the market, because over time it's going to net you a much better return. So compounding is an important concept, but compounding in an appropriate way, given your time horizon and your length of time in the market, that's the important thing. The cool thing is, a lot of you, if you have retirement plans at your companies, a lot of your retirement plans will have things called target date funds in them. And target date funds are kind of a set it and forget it type of investment, where you choose the target date fund closest to your age of retirement, which most people target is like 65. So you might have ABC fund, target date fund 2035. That means 2035 is the year closest you turn 65. You might have, but if you're younger, you will probably want something like a 2065 fund. The numbers are just the years closest to when you're going to retire, and then it does all the work for you. So don't be afraid of taking a little risk earlier in your investing life. There's still a war for talent out there, as companies are beefing up their benefits programs and trying to attract and retain top tier talent. So it's going to be important for you to understand your benefits, and if you have a spouse or significant other, their benefits, because that can really make a difference to your bottom line. So when you're starting out in your job and in your professional life, doing things like contributing to that retirement account, looking for tuition reimbursement, things like pet insurance or gym memberships, these are all things that a lot of companies offer. But when you first start a job, like you might be looking at the big picture things, and there's a lot that feels overwhelming about it. So don't be afraid to go back and revisit at least annually through your HR department or your online, company's portal. What kind of benefits are out there, and like don't be afraid to take advantage of them. So the juggling act, midlife. One of the reasons it's so important to build good financial habits early is that they're going to help you juggle money matters once you get to midlife. That's the time when you have career moves, marriage, having kids, caring for a spouse, caring for parents and other family members. And that's all along with saving for education for possibly your children, saving for retirement. So, things are difficult. There are challenges every stage. I think mid stage is your most probably challenging stage, simply by the nature. It's not even things that, it's not even that you're making complexity. It's that by virtue of the fact that you are self-sufficient and maybe have children, maybe have aging parents, this is probably the most complicated stage of your life. So let's talk about navigating those challenges and addressing those concerns, and how to keep your cool. So one of the big financial matters that comes at midlife is how to manage money as a married couple. And interestingly enough, marriage is declining, but people are still having joint households. So it might not be that you're married, you might just have coupled up with someone else. So the most important thing to do here is to work together and communicate, which I know can sound like blah, 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 blah. But like there's no silver bullet for managing money. Some people, you might want to put everything together. Some people you just might want to have one account together. But the important thing to do is that you're on the same page at least annually, if not a couple of times throughout the year. Make sure beneficiaries are up to date. Make sure that you know if someone has a life insurance policy and you're named on that life insurance policy, that you know about it. Make sure you understand if that person is saving for a big purchase, that they understand what you're doing in terms of savings. It's really about just finding the balance that's right for you as a couple when it comes to money, and communicating regularly. And it doesn't have to be like this awful sit down, we hate to do this. Like pop open a bottle of your favorite wine, order in your favorite Chinese takeout, and treat yourselves a little while you're having the conversation. So join this conversation up with something that brings you pleasure, brings you joy. And you don't have to agree on everything money related, but you have to know about what the other person is doing, and lay out some ground rules. Like it's not you trying to control anyone or someone trying to control you. But if you have joint finances together, like, hey, set some ground rules. Like, how much can you spend without asking for my permission, and vice versa. Talk about your financial goals. Share views on credit and credit usage, the saving that you're doing. If your spending is, typically one person spends a little bit more and one person is, a little bit more of a saver. That's okay. Just make sure you're having conversations about it and balancing each other out. Marriage and partnership, it's a compromise, and that's the same thing that happens when it comes to money. Create a budget together, and talk about what that budget is. Work out logistics, so any agreements, paperwork that you need. So sometimes before you get married, a prenuptial agreement might make sense, depending on who came into the marriage with what assets. And at all times, your legal documents like wills, trusts, beneficiary designations, make sure those are up to date. This is another place where your financial advisor or an investment professional can help you. because they can help you go through your assets and assemble a team of professionals like a tax and legal guidance to help you put together your estate plan. So there's a lot to think about when it comes about marriage, but what about if you're still single? So it's true that more and more women in the U.S. Are opting out of marriage. So in 2009, the percentage of American married women dropped below 50%. So in 2023, the estimated median age for a first marriage for a woman was around the age of 28.4, while for men, it was about age 30. The median age of first marriages for both men and women has increased in general. So in the 60s, the median age for women getting married was about 20, and for men, it was about 23. So according to a survey done by Pew Research, about half of Americans don't see being married as essential to living a fulfilling life. So 16% for men and 17% for women. For both men and women, having a job or career that they enjoy was deemed more important. 57% for men and 46% for women. And also having children still ranked as essential. So 16% for men and 22% for women. So marriage has been on the decline, whereas career has really risen up the ranks. So let's go back to the benefits of saving and investing early. So saving and investing early and consistently over a long time is important to retirement success. And this chart compares different retirement outcomes based on various savings and investing behaviors of 4 hypothetical people. So the first is the consistent saver and the investor who reaches age 65 with substantially more than the other savers. So that's this blue line right here. The early savers and investors saved only 1/3 of the amount of the late savers and investors, but because of the power of long-term compounding on money invested early, the early savers accumulated more in savings than those late savers. So, late savers started, let's call it 15 years later. And then early savers, this is the dotted line right here, saved less, but saved earlier and had more of, substantially more, $40,000 more in their retirement account. Consistent savers in green save as much and as often as the consistent investors in blue, but they kept their savings in cash rather than investing it. So again, back to the previous slide or 2 slides ago, you want to take appropriate risk and be invested in the market in an appropriate way and not just hunker down in cash, because the green line and the blue line save the same amount in the same amount of time, but because the folks who didn't take as much risk and just stayed in cash or money market, they had almost 3 times less than the folks who were appropriately invested for their age. So, okay, so taking care of you is important, but what about taking care of other people? Caregiving is probably the most common retirement savings disruptor, especially for women. So as women, we are more likely to become caregivers, and that's for children, that's for our spouses, that's for elderly parents. And I will tell you, I've done all of those caretaking roles, and I've seen caretaking roles for all of my friends, even my friends who don't have children, right? It's not just if you have children, if you are the caretaker. And in fact, what I've seen is that a lot of times when you don't have children, the other people in your life, your aunts, your uncles, your grandparents, not just your parents, are like, hey, I need your help, and your sister or brother can't help, or my kids can't help because they have kids. I need you to help me out. So Sometimes it's actually more of a burden when you don't have children. And I know that sounds counterintuitive. That's just what I see. So sometimes caregiving is planned. Like you might have been like, oh, hey, I'm going to have kids, and kids come on time, and you're like, okay, I'm taking some time off to take care of them, or it's something that we've planned to do. But sometimes it's just something that's thrust on you. In 2022, both of my parents had open heart surgery within a month of each other. One was planned and one wasn't, but let me tell you, it was intense, and it was unexpected, and it was very hard. I still had kids at home. It was very hard juggling career, kids who are in, sports and, clubs and all kinds of things, and managing work. So caregivers, actually, the statistic I've heard is that 67% of caregivers are women. So it does fall to us more, whether by choice or just that's the way that, our society is set up. Doesn't matter. That's what the statistic is. So if you're a woman, you're more likely to statistically become a caregiver. So caregivers face loss of income and also the cost of caring for the recipient. They can lose employer-based medical benefits if they really have to cut their hours back and they can't work full-time. That can lead to shrinking savings to pay for caregiving costs, threaten your retirement and income due to fewer contributions to your retirement plan. So one cost you might not immediately think about is the expense of having children. In addition to caregiving, this biologically falls to us, right? So many women do choose to delay having children, and they may have the experience of, just challenges of infertility. And that's a big cost. So, if you, as a woman, go through in vitro fertilization treatment, that can cost on average about $23,000. If you're younger and you're like, hey, there's no perfect person in my life and I want to freeze my eggs, which has become much more common to do, that can cost $30,000 to $40,000 to freeze your eggs. If you've waited longer in life and you've decided to try to get pregnant and the quality of your eggs is, reflects that you're at a later stage in life, using a donor egg can cost anywhere from $5,000 to $50,000, and what I've seen with my friends is it's closer to that $50,000 mark. And I've had friends who have gone through all of these things. I remember when I got pregnant, or I was trying to get pregnant, for many of you, might have the same experience where like kind of all of your friends are trying to get pregnant at the same time. And what I found was that it was easy for me, but really for a lot of my friends, it really wasn't. And that was eye-opening. So, because I think you spend your whole life trying to make sure you're not getting pregnant. And then when you are trying to get pregnant, you're like, well, this should be easy, right? And I think I was not the norm in getting pregnant easily. A lot of my friends struggled with it. All of them had these ancillary costs that you're looking at here, or almost all of them did. So, okay, so you have children, you have raised them. What happens when they come back to the nest? And this is all in your midlife, right? I was telling you, it's complicated, it's complex. Like, this is why. So you may be faced with an adult child who's wanting to move back home because student loan debt, lack of affordable housing. Adult children moving back home to be fully supported by their parents can get real expensive. And this could, again, impact your retirement savings. This would be a good time to have a conversation with your financial advisor about setting limits on living expenses that will be covered, but also having a discussion with adult children about how to contribute to the cost of the household. Again, my children are now out of the house. I'm trying to keep them that way. They're both in college right now, but we make it pretty easy for them to come home. The number one bill that is paid for for adult children? Anybody? It's the cell phone bill. And everyone says, oh, it's the family plan. It's the family plan. I'm like, okay, the family plan isn't free. like, so I think it's important philosophically to assume that our children are capable of doing things like of everything, right? But if they're moving back in with you, assume they're capable of contributing to household expenses, because our children rise to the level of what we expect them to do almost all the time. Now, it might not happen right away, but it generally does happen, and it's hard to set boundaries and lay down the law, especially if your child's feeling awful about having to move back in with you. But it will help them feel more capable if you do put those boundaries and tell them, like, you have to contribute to the household. This is not a free ride. Okay, so while the middle stage of life was a juggling act, later stage is really about getting your ducks in a row. What retirement resources are you going to have, and how can you make the most of them? Helping your adult kids learning to be financially independent adults may benefit you someday if you need them to help care for you, just as you may have to do for your own parents. So are you prepared for that? There are two things you can do ahead of time. One is to have caregiving conversations with your loved ones early and often, and make sure you know what they want, what they want for care, and what they have for financial resources for that care. No one likes to think about needing long-term care, or even less appealing, how to pay for it. Yet these expenses are a key risk to your retirement assets, and you need to plan for them. So guess what percentage of people will need some sort of long-term care service during their lifetime? The answer is 70%. This includes both unpaid at-home care and services like assisted living, nursing homes, etc. Women need care longer, 3.7 years on average, more than men, 2.2 years. And even though 1/3 of today's 65-year-olds may never need long-term care support, 20% will need it for longer than 5 years. So basically, you have three options for paying for long-term care. You can rely on your own savings in your retirement. You can buy insurance and pay now to protect you against something that might not happen. And I'm going to tell everyone listening, have a conversation in your 40s and 50s about long-term care insurance, because Medicare does not cover long-term care insurance, okay? And getting a policy in place in your 40s or 50s can really help buffer against long-term care expenses later in life. So your spouse or to your spouse or a family member, long-term care is expensive, but having a plan for your care might make a difference in your quality of life as well as your family's life. So discuss with your family in advance your wishes for long-term care, how they can help out both physically and financially. And those conversations might cover the following issues among some others. So what assets you might segregate from retirement savings to put towards caring for parents, access to their financial and estate planning professionals and the location of and access to their financial accounts, their estate planning documents like wills, trusts, power of attorney, and healthcare proxies, what resources they have to pay for their own care, and a list of their bills and access to their bank accounts and passwords so you can help pay for them. Caregiving costs. Caregiving takes many forms. Many of us help older, sick, or disabled family members and friends every day. We know we are helping, but we don't think of it ourselves as caregivers. We are glad to do this and we feel rewarded by it, but if the demands are heavy over time, that we can become exhausted and stressed. We think we should be able to handle caregiving roles on top of busy work, family schedules, and beginning to feel guilty and depressed as our stamina wanes. So for some people, caregiving occurs gradually over time. For others, it can happen overnight, like when my parents had their open heart surgery. Caregiving may be full or part-time, living with loved ones or providing care from a distance. Caregivers provide a wide range of services, from simple, such as grocery shopping, to complex things like medical procedures. So for the most part, friends, neighbors, and most of all, family members provide, without pay, the vast majority of healthcare in this country. Social Security for women, you rely on it, and we rely on it more. So women rely on Social Security more heavily than men due to things like pay gap, taking time off of work for caregiving, and we live longer. They're also less likely to have defined benefit plans like pensions. So Social Security is like that one regular source of income. And this is a frightening statistic, but 82% of women who are entitled to survivor benefits and their own retirement benefits would have received a higher monthly amount if they knew they could delay taking their own benefit until 70. So this is where having a relationship with a financial professional helps. So we have tools where we can actually run different scenarios for you in terms of when you can take your Social Security. So when you walk into the Social Security to sign up, you can be prepared for that discussion. Make sure you're armed with information before you take that benefit. So maximizing Social Security benefits. If you're single in your peak earning years, consider working longer, as your higher earning years will replace your lower earning ones. If you're married, encourage the spouse who has the highest benefit to let it grow to maximize your survivor benefit, because when one of you passes away, the surviving spouse will have the one higher benefit. So you don't get both, you get the highest one. If divorced and you're married for 10 years or longer, you may qualify for benefits off of your ex-spouses. Also be aware of if you remarry, that could violate that rule. So before you get remarried, be sure to talk to a financial professional to find out the best way to take Social Security before you get married, and that rules out some of those options. So if you're widowed, you want to check to see if you can start with one benefit, yours or their survivor benefit, and then switch to the other one. This is very common, and a lot of people don't know that it's available to them. So important estate planning tools for smart women. You want to have a living trust and a will. Revocable living trusts are the most common ways that folks protect their assets and make sure that they skip probate. So a will and a last will and testament will provide for where your assets are allocated to after you are gone, but it won't allow your assets to skip probate. Directives and power. So you want to make sure you have a medical directive and a durable power of attorney. Typically, I like to say have it be the same person, because if someone is making medical decisions for you because you're incapacitated, they likely have a financial component to them. So it's easier to have one person that's able to make both of those decisions. But that's not always the case. Sometimes you might have a child who's a financial advisor and one who is a nurse or a doctor, and so you might want to divvy up those powers of attorney. It's up to you. Investment planning. Make sure you have a plan and for your assets, and you have written instructions. The clearer you make, I would say clear is kind, unclear is unkind. I stole that from Brene Brown. The clearer you can make your goals and wishes, the better it is for the people who are left. So key takeaways. Start early, build good financial habits, plan for caregiving, either for children or for parents or loved ones in your life, maximize your benefits around Social Security, and prepare for longevity. So next steps would be to assess your current situation, review your current financial goals, seek professional advice. Like, we are here as a team to help you with planning and putting together a game plan for all of the things that we discussed today. Stay informed. Thank you for being part of this webinar, but there are a lot of tools out there, books, podcasts. Stay educated, stay informed, and take action, right? So educate yourself, but just take that next step. Don't be afraid. So thank you. Really appreciated having everyone here today. And if you do have questions, this is my direct contact information, and I'd be thrilled to talk with you and get any questions answered that you need. Thank you, and cheers to being a financially empowered woman.